This Caucus 1 is dealing with mainstreaming productivity in the public service. As we had indicated earlier, it is new territory to so many people in the public service.
It's not the business of government to do business, but it's the business of government to oil the processes, which means that you are creating or making things happen so that there is stability in everything that we are doing. There is an accountability aspect that we must see the value for money in delivering these services. That is why we want to understand the productivity aspect. Number two, public services are an input to the economic activities, and therefore the quality of services provided matters a lot. And for that reason, the provisioning and accessibility of quality public services determines gains in social welfare. The key factor of production is actually labor. And when we look at over the period, what we see is that the public sector employment as a ratio to the overall employment has been declining from about 10% to almost 4% in the last 5 years. And when you look at public sector employment to the formal employment, it has also been on the decline, moving from almost 39% to around 30%. If wage rates is increasing because of productivity, then Wanjiko and myself will see value for money because the services will be there. Since 2016, there has been a slow growth as far as labor in the education sector is concerned. And we looked at the productivity of the sector, measuring it with just looking at the average output that the sector is producing. And what you see is an increase, but at a slower pace. But when you use an outcome like the Human Development Indicator, you find that it looks like it has not grown too much in a period of more than 5 years. From 0.56 to 0.60 is not a major improvement, which means that we may not be realizing fully the outcomes as far as the production process in that sector is concerned. We have a challenge, we have an issue before us, but we can make progress if we can design and align productivity measures framework to complement outcome measures, if we can strengthen capacity in building productivity measures and linking them very clearly to service delivery. And to end is to say there are two key policy implications that come from this. That, as I indicated, there is a National Productivity and Competitiveness Bill for 2019, which, if we are able to finalize with it, could strengthen and broaden the scope of National Productivity and Competitiveness Center and make it productive in measuring productivity. And also for all state actors need to embed productivity improvement in performance contracting, and we can do that by strengthening the staff performance appraisal systems.
Determining wages when the supply side, of course that is employment, was a problem. When the people looking for jobs were so many, then it will give the leeway to the hirers, that's the employers, then to fix very low wages because the supply is very high. So we actually came up with a mechanism of how then do we determine proper wages for the workers. And therefore it was agreed that we come up with productivity measured so that it can serve as a major compensable factor to determine wage guidelines or wages for the workers. I want to say that the paper captures very well the spirit and the context in which it has been written. The only area I want to mention is that there needs to be a lot of harmonization in the write-up, because there are areas where we are saying we have not done labor measurement, labor productivity measurement. And at the same time, when you look at the tables, you see the figures to show the labor productivity in various sectors. So we need to say we have done, but perhaps not very well in the manner in which it can help us apply the same principles in the public service. And then the other part of the paper, if you read the paper very well, you will see that we are isolating public service as a major employer. But if you look at the details of the paper, you will see that the informal sector actually is still leading. It occupies a big segment of our employment situation in Kenya. So I just want to mention that the emphasis should also be focusing on the key services which have been identified, health sector and education, and we pilot them and see how can we be able to measure productivity in those two key sectors, and then use that information to roll it up to the rest of the other sectors of the economy.
The current scenario in Kenya is very interesting. You get us complaining that the wage bill has gone very high. But on the other hand, there's another complaint that we don't have enough doctors, we don't have enough teachers, we don't have enough people to work in offices. So where are we as Kenyans? When the wage bill is too high, then we are affecting development. And when we affect the development, then the nation cannot move very far. Starting from institutions of learning, as a nation, we need to start appreciating our nation and taking patriotism as the key thing. And that is to ensure that we change the culture of working. Because if we can work on the culture, if we can introduce something that can help in change of culture, the way people think, the attitude, then we are going to improve productivity. Change will only be realized if we start by ourselves, and the rest can follow. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
One, we need the right of information, and that is to manage public expectations. Because one, if we are providing services that are an enabler, then it means if a road needs to be constructed, then I as a public know that this should be done with this timeline. And if these timelines have been assessed and it has been established that this can be done within this time, then why is it not done? We need to take responsibility, even as the public, even as the ones who are providing these services as an enablers. So this presentation comes in at a very timely time where, as we bring in more processes and as we even evaluate the initiatives that have been put before, we need to start talking about accountability.
So we feel actually we are the center of this debate. The SRC would be able to reward individual productivity in line with what an employee produces at unit level. The fear is that productivity has largely been mixed up with performance. And I like the approaches that have come through, that we can use the indices that can be identified at certain sector level, whether health, education, security, immigration, and stuff, to then measure the productivity of institutions at institutional level.
We are essentially not talking about new investments. We are interested in asking ourselves, how much more can we get from what we have? Or how can we continue getting the same output with less input? So we don't advocate new investments. We don't advocate hiring new people. We also don't advocate firing the existing people, but we want to ask ourselves, how can we organize the resources we have so that we can get more output?
I notice that one of the biggest problems in productivity in this country is bureaucracy. Besides that, we have to get attitude change. We have to deal with the miniature corruptions within the workforces. There are people who have employed people they are so close to that they can't reprimand them, they can't punish them, they can't just do anything. But the biggest culprit in productivity and wage bill in this country are the county governments. Sometimes I think we shouldn't have done devolution the way we did it. Probably we should have devolved the funds, but not the governments, because we have sent miniature corruption centers in the counties.
We are increasingly observing a public service which is getting demoralized year in, year out. You have talked about regulations, thoughts that are in cupboards for now. I think there is something that needs to be done in encouraging patriotism, a sense of owning the country, that this is our country, we want to do it. Secondly, we are dealing also with a generational change. The generation we are dealing with today, for example, do not have the patience like we used to have for pensionable, is it permanent and pensionable? Now you have a generation which go for contractual, short term. So even if you are expecting production, somebody stays in a job for 3 years and is going out. It's a big challenge.
People have made beautiful speeches. There's one word I didn't hear, motivation. I believe performance and production must go together. And they go together if we motivate our staff. If we make our staff work in environments that are happy, enjoyable, where they wake up every day wanting to go to work. You spend 8 hours of your day in the office. If you are happy and you are looking forward to going to work, you are going to be productive and be involved and informed. We, the senior people, now I think I'm senior because I chair a board, I want to say we must bring human relations to the way we treat our junior staff.
In summary, what is lacking is called leadership. Leadership is the one responsible for planning. It's responsible for organizing the structures. It is responsible for leading, motivating, and directing. And you are so docile as Kenyans that you know what should be done. It is not being done, and you are doing nothing about it until your children will riot against you all.